In 1984, the Miller family sat down for Sunday dinner in their quiet Midwestern home. By the next morning, they were gone. The table was still set, food half-eaten, radio still playing. But the family vanished without a trace. For 40 years, the house kept its silence until a hidden box was discovered in the basement. A box filled with cassette tapes and that told the story no one was supposed to hear. October 7th, 1984. Hollow Creek Road, a small stretch of farmland outside Bloomington, Indiana. James Miller, 42, a factory worker. Linda, 39, homemaker. Their children, Sarah, 13, and Tommy, 10. Neighbors said the Millers were ordinary. Friendly, church-going, hard-working, nothing strange, nothing unusual. That Sunday night, lights glowed in the dining room. Through the windows, neighbors could see the family gathered at the table. Dinner smelled of roast chicken and fresh bread. At 9:15 p.m., the music on the radio drifted out through the open windows. At 9:20, laughter. At 9:25, silence. By 7 a.m. the next morning, the front door was wide open, plates still on the table, half-filled glasses of milk, chairs pushed back, as if the family had just stood up and walked away. But they never came back. Police swarmed the house. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no fingerprints except the family's own. James's car still sat in the driveway. Linda's purse was still on the counter. Sarah's homework on the kitchen table, pencil dropped mid-sentence. The only thing missing was the family themselves. Detectives canvassed the area. No one saw anyone leave. No cars came or went. It was as if the Millers had vanished into thin air. The case made headlines. Family disappears during dinner. But without evidence, the story faded. The house remained, unsold, untouched. Over the years, Hollow Creek Road became a ghost story. Kids dared each other to peek through the windows. Some swore they saw shadows moving inside, heard muffled voices when no one lived there. By the 1990s, the property was abandoned. Paint peeled, windows shattered, weeds swallowed the yard. But the dining room table? Still set, still waiting. 40 years later, developers purchased the property to demolish the house. When workers tore down the basement wall, their hammers struck something hollow. Behind a false panel, they found a box, rusted, heavy, sealed shut with old tape. Inside, 12 cassette tapes. A Polaroid photograph of the Miller family at that very dining table, smiling at the camera. A single sheet of paper. On it, scrawled in shaky handwriting. Play them in order, or it doesn't make sense. Investigators labeled the box as evidence, but one tape leaked. A local reporter got his hands on it. The tape began with the hum of the radio, clinking dishes, the sound of a family eating dinner. Then James's voice, low but firm. "We don't talk about it at the table, not in front of the kids." Linda's voice. "They already know, we all do." And then Sarah's small voice trembling. "Is it gonna happen tonight?" The tape ended in static. The Millers hadn't just disappeared. They left behind a record, a breadcrumb trail hidden for 4 decades. But what those tapes revealed was far stranger and far darker than anyone imagined. The second cassette was dated October 5th, 1984, 2 days before the family disappeared. The tape hissed, then voices filled the static. James. "I saw them again by the tree line, just standing there." Linda. "You need to stop saying that in front of the kids." Sarah. "Dad, I saw them too. They don't move. They just watch." Tommy. "I heard them whisper my name." James slammed his hand against the table, the sound rattling through the tape. "It's not in your head. They're here." Static swallowed the last words. The tape forced investigators to reopen old police files. Back in October 1984, the Millers had called the sheriff 3 times in the week before their disappearance. Complaints of trespassers in the woods, strange voices at night, unexplained lights. Deputies searched but found nothing. The final note in the log read, "House secure, No intruders. Family appears distressed. Possible paranoia. 2 days later, the Millers were gone. The third cassette shook even the most hardened detectives. It started with Sarah crying. "Mom, I don't want to go to school tomorrow. They'll be there again." Linda's voice soothing but strained. "It's all right, honey. If we stay together, they can't take us." Then James whispering, closer to the recorder this time. "I don't think this is about us anymore. It's about the kids. They want the twins." Investigators paused. The twins? But the Millers only had 2 children, Sarah and Tommy. The Polaroid found inside the box showed the family around the dining table. At first glance, it was ordinary, 4 people smiling awkwardly at the camera. But when analysts enhanced the photo, they noticed something disturbing in the window behind them. 2 faint silhouettes, child-sized, standing outside, watching. The Polaroid found inside the box showed the family around the dining table. At first glance, it was ordinary, 4 people smiling awkwardly at the camera. But when analysts enhanced the photo, they noticed something disturbing in the window behind them. 2 faint silhouettes, child-sized, standing outside, watching. The 4th tape was marked simply, "Dinner." The sound of plates, forks scraping, the radio humming faintly. Then a knock at the door, 3 slow knocks. James whispered, "Don't answer it." Silence. The knocking came again, louder this time. Tommy whispered, "They found us." And then Linda's voice breaking, "Oh God, they're inside." The tape ended in a violent burst of static. The Millers hadn't been imagining things. They believed something was coming for them. And on the night of October 7th, 1984, whatever knocked at their door stepped inside. The 5th cassette was badly warped, but investigators managed to restore most of it. The tape opened with hurried voices, chairs scraping, dishes clattering. James, "We can't stay here. Pack the kids, we leave tonight." Linda, "It's too late. You know that." Sarah, "Dad, they're in the hallway." Tommy, "I don't want to go with them." Then a sharp sound, like glass shattering. The microphone tumbled, capturing only muffled screams. The last words were James's desperate, broken, "Don't let them take the twins." But again, Sarah and Tommy weren't twins. When investigators heard those words, they returned to the Miller basement, where the box of tapes had been hidden. Behind another layer of plaster, they found faint writing scrawled in pencil. 2 for 2. Balance must be kept. Beneath it, a handprint. Small, child-sized. The 6th tape was labeled Exit. It began with the sound of the radio cutting out mid-song. The static rose, swallowing the room. Then Sarah's voice, "Mom? Dad? Where'd you go?" Tommy whispered, "They're waiting. By the wall." Footsteps, 4 sets, fading into the distance. And then, silence. The tape clicked, and a faint hum bled through, rhythmic, almost mechanical. It didn't stop. It kept repeating. Investigators described it as sounding like a metronome. 40 years later, the Miller house is gone, demolished. But locals say the ground where the dining room once stood is never quiet. At night, you can hear plates clinking, chairs scraping, a radio humming. And sometimes, faintest of all, the sound of children laughing in unison. The Millers didn't just vanish. They left behind their voices. And those voices hinted at something impossible, that Sarah and Tommy were never alone at the table. Someone else was with them. And the tapes were just the beginning. The box contained 12 tapes, but investigators had only played 6. The rest were carefully labeled with dates and single words: Friday, storm, balance, exit. Tape number 7 began with a thunderstorm hammering the roof. Rain, wind, the groan of the old farmhouse. James's voice was closer to the recorder now, whispering, urgent. "They said 2 must go, 2 must stay. That's the balance." Linda sobbed in the background. "You can't believe this. They're just stories." James's voice cracked. Then why did I see them at the edge of the woods? Why did Tommy draw their faces without ever meeting them? Police reports revealed another detail. When detectives searched the Miller house in 1984, they found Tommy's notebook. Page after page of childlike drawings. Two identical children, standing by trees, watching from the window. No one ever connected the sketches to local folklore until now. Locals told the story in hushed tones. Two children who appeared at the edge of Hollow Creek. Some said they were spirits of a brother and sister lost in a fire in the 1950s. Others whispered they were something older, mimics, beings that looked like children but weren't. The rules of the legend were simple. If you saw them once, they'd appear again. If you heard them call your name, you had to answer. And if you sat down to dinner and there were more chairs than family members, you'd never leave the table. The Millers had set 4 chairs, but the tape suggested there had been 6. This tape began with the sound of forks on plates, a quiet meal. Then Sarah's voice, soft, afraid. "Mom, why did you set 2 extra places?" Linda's voice shaking. "Because they said they're coming, and if we don't, it'll be worse." James slammed his hand on the table. "We don't feed them." Silence. Then a knock at the door. 3 slow knocks. A voice, high, childlike, whispered through the static. "We're hungry." Investigators returned to the demolished site, digging deeper into the foundation. Etched into the basement floor were faint circles, carved into the concrete. Inside each circle, handprints. 4 larger ones, 2 small. Fresh soil still pressed into the grooves as if the prints hadn't aged in 40 years. The 9th tape was nearly unlistenable, but fragments could be made out. Linda praying under her breath. Sarah crying, "They're at the table, they're sitting here." Tommy whispering, "They said there are twins. They said they've always been here." And then James, desperate. "If we leave now, we break the balance. If we stay, they take us all." The recording ended with chairs screeching across the floor. The journalist who leaked the first tape scribbled in his notebook, "The Millers didn't vanish, they were taken. But not by men. By something that needed pairs. Something that called itself balance." He underlined one phrase 3 times. 2 for 2. The Millers hadn't been imagining shadows. They'd been preparing for guests. Guests that every story warned about. The watching twins weren't just legend, they were at the table. This cassette was labeled simply, Friday. The tape opened with James's voice, calm but strained. "I talked to Pastor Green. He said if we keep the door locked and don't set the places, we'll be safe." Linda snapped back, "You don't understand. They don't need doors, James, they're already here." The sound of something sliding across the table, plates. Sarah's voice whispered, "Mom set out 6 again." Tommy muttered, "They're waiting." Outside. Then came the sound of 2 chairs moving, though no one in the family had stood. Records showed that Sheriff Callahan stopped by the Miller house that same Friday. His notes read, "Family appeared paranoid, mentioned figures in woods, insisted on extra places at dinner table. Nothing suspicious observed." He left at 8:15 p.m. The neighbors claimed the lights stayed on until 9:30. After that, darkness. The 11th tape was labeled Storm. Rain hammered against the windows, thunder shaking the walls. The tape hissed under the weight of static, but voices broke through. Linda, "Don't open the curtains." Sarah, "They're pressed against the glass." Tommy, "They're knocking. They want in." James's voice trembling, "If we acknowledge them, it's over. Do not answer." Then faint but clear, 2 voices outside, childlike in perfect unison. "We're cold. Let us in. We're family too." Linda screamed. The tape cut to static. Among the evidence, investigators found another Polaroid tucked between tape number 11 and tape number 12. This one showed the Miller dining table again. Only this time it wasn't set for 4. It was set for 6. And at the far ends of the table, blurred but visible, sat 2 small figures. smiling. The last cassette was the most disturbing of all. It began with the sound of forks clattering to the floor. James's voice, "They're in the house, God help us." Linda sobbing, "Take me, not the children." Sarah screaming, "They're at the table, they're sitting in our chairs." Tommy crying, "Make them stop looking at me." Then silence. Long, suffocating silence. Finally, a faint metronome sound, ticking, steady, endless, and a voice not from any of the Millers, a child's voice, or two, speaking as one. 2 for 2. Balance is kept. The tape ended. The reporter who leaked the first tapes never published the rest. His notebook was found years later, hidden in his attic. The final page read, "I played all 12 tapes. The Millers didn't just vanish, they were replaced. The watching twins sat down at that table, and once they did, the family was gone." He underlined one phrase, shaky and uneven. They never left Hollow Creek. They just changed who was at the table. For 40 years, Hollow Creek kept its silence. But the tapes revealed the truth. The Millers weren't the first. And if the legend is true, they won't be the last. Because once the extra places are set, there's no turning back. When all 12 cassettes were cataloged, investigators sealed them in evidence lockers. But copies began to leak online. Grainy MP3s that spread like wildfire through forums and dark web threads. Some listeners swore they heard extra voices on the recordings, whispers that weren't documented in the official transcripts. One user posted, "Play tape 112 backward. You'll hear them say, 'We're still here.'" Most dismissed it as internet hysteria, but others believed it. An elderly neighbor, Margaret Lewis, who had lived across from the Millers in 1984, finally broke her silence. She told reporters, "That night I looked out my window around 9. I saw the Millers sitting at the table, but there were 6 of them. I told myself I was tired. I went back to bed. When I woke up, the house was empty." When asked why she never told police, Margaret's voice cracked. "Because the next night I saw 6 figures again, only this time they were at my table." The journalist who first leaked tape number 1, a man named Daniel Rhodes, vanished in 2007. His car was found abandoned near Hollow Creek, driver's door open, headlights still on. Inside the vehicle, officers found a grocery bag, a notebook, and an old cassette player. The last tape he'd been listening to was still inside. The tape was blank except for the sound of a metronome. Tick, tock, tick, tock. No trace of Rhodes was ever found. In 2025, after the house was demolished, a university archaeology team surveyed the foundation. Beneath the dining room floor, they uncovered something chilling, a stone circle etched into the earth. 6 seats carved crudely into the stone as if meant for a table long gone. Each seat was marked with initials. 4 were the Millers. 2 had no names, just the word, twins. Local teens claimed that on quiet nights they still saw 2 children at the tree line near the old Miller property, pale, identical, never moving. One boy dared to shout his name across the field. His friends said he froze in place, eyes wide, whispering, "They know me now." He never spoke of it again. When authorities cleared the Miller basement for good, they found one last scrap of paper wedged in the paneling near where the tapes were hidden. The note was in Sarah's handwriting, dated October 7th, 1984. "If someone finds this, don't sit at the table, don't set extra chairs, and if they knock, don't let them in." The Millers weren't the first, and they weren't the last. Hollow Creek carried a curse older than the family who lived there, a curse bound by dinner tables, empty chairs, and the children who always come knocking. The watching twins never left. They just wait for the next invitation. 40 years after the Millers vanished, Emily Carter, a graduate student in folklore, returned to Bloomington. She wasn't just a researcher, she was Linda Miller's niece. Emily had grown up hearing whispers about her aunt, uncle, and cousins, but her mother forbade her to ever speak their names. "That family is gone," she'd say. "Don't go looking." But Emily couldn't stop. When the box of tapes surfaced, She knew it was her chance. She packed her recorder, flashlight, and notebooks and drove down Hollow Creek Road. The foundation of the house was gone, but the air still felt heavy. Emily had managed to obtain copies of the Miller tapes. Most she'd heard already, but one marked Balance Unreleased had never been published. She pressed play. The tape began with a voice Emily didn't recognize. Not James, not Linda, not the children. A man's voice, calm, deliberate. Balance must be honored. 2 for 2. Always. Then Sarah's terrified whisper. Please, we don't want to play anymore. The tape ended abruptly. Emily froze. The voice, it sounded like her grandfather. Emily confronted her mother. Why didn't you ever tell me about Grandpa? Her mother's face went pale. Because your grandfather believed in the legend. He said the Millers owed a debt. He set the table that night. Emily's chest clenched. You're saying he invited them in? Her mother whispered. He thought if he offered them 2, they would spare the rest of us. Emily staggered back. And he chose Sarah and Tommy. Her mother didn't deny it. Emily drove back to the site that night, storm clouds boiling overhead. She set her flashlight on the cracked earth where the dining room once stood. And she waited. At 9:15 p.m., the exact time the Millers had vanished, the air grew colder. She heard it. The scrape of chairs, the faint hum of a radio, and then laughter. Children's laughter. Emily drove back to the site that night, storm clouds boiling overhead. She set her flashlight on the cracked earth where the dining room once stood, and she waited. At 9:15 p.m., the exact time the Millers had vanished, the air grew colder. She heard it, the scrape of chairs, the faint hum of a radio, and then laughter. Children's laughter. The children turned toward her in unison, eyes dark and hollow. One raised a hand and gestured to the empty spot at the table. A 7th chair appeared. Emily's voice shook. No, I'm not part of this. The twins spoke together, their voices layered, echoing. Family always joins, 2 for 2. Balance is kept. The Miller's eyes shifted toward her, pleading as if begging her not to. But the 7th chair scraped back, waiting. Emily Carter came to find the truth. But Hollow Creek didn't deal in truth. It dealt in balance. And when the 7th chair appeared, she realized the curse had never ended. It was waiting for her. Emily's breath came in sharp bursts as she stared at the 7th chair. The air around the table shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. The watching twins smiled, their teeth too perfect, too white. They spoke in unison. Sit. Balance must be kept. Emily shook her head violently. No, I'm not part of this. I'm not them. But the chair scraped closer, inching toward her. The ground beneath her feet seemed to pulse like a heartbeat under the soil. Emily's breath came in sharp bursts as she stared at the 7th chair. The air around the table shimmered like heat rising off asphalt. She turned her gaze to the Millers. James's frozen expression looked desperate. Linda's eyes shimmered with terror. Sarah and Tommy's mouths were open mid-scream, their hands reaching toward her. For a split second, Emily swore their eyes locked with hers, pleading, "Don't." But the watching twins leaned forward, whispering, 2 for 2. They fed us. Now you will too. The wind howled through Hollow Creek. Emily's flashlight flickered and died, plunging the field into darkness except for the eerie glow of the table. She felt something tug at her arms, invisible hands dragging her forward. Her heels dug into the dirt, but the pull was relentless. Her recorder slipped from her bag, landing in the soil, still running. It captured her ragged breathing, her whispered plea. Please, I don't want to go. The watching twins reached out, pale hands stretching across the table. When their fingers brushed Emily's skin, a flood of voices tore through her skull. The laughter of Sarah, the cries of Tommy, the desperate prayers of Linda, The final screams of James, and beneath it all, the steady tick-tock of a metronome. Emily screamed, collapsing into the chair. In an instant, the table vanished. The plates, the food, the Millers, the twins. Gone. The field was empty. Silent. Only Emily's recorder remained in the dirt, still whirring. On playback, investigators later heard one last sound. Children's laughter. 6 voices. Months later, an anonymous letter appeared on the desk of the Bloomington Gazette. It contained a Polaroid photograph. In it, the Miller family sat once again at their dining table. But now a young woman sat with them, head bowed, eyes vacant. Emily Carter. On the back of the photo, scrawled in faded ink, "Balance is kept." In 1984, the Millers vanished during dinner. 40 years later, Emily Carter came searching for answers and became part of the story herself. Because in Hollow Creek, the chairs are always waiting, and the watching twins never leave the table empty.